Welcome to your virtual coaching session. I'm your certified personal trainer and master life coach, Megan Stoddard. You've got me right in your pocket each week as we cover topics relating to weight loss, women's health, mental well-being, and the like. Also, you can create and enjoy a body that gives you the freedom and energy to do all those fun things you've always wanted to do with your family and live the life that you've been dreaming of. Let's get going on today's session. What if I told you that your weight loss plateau has nothing to do with your willpower, your determination, your capability, and everything to do with your blood sugar? Now, hang on before you skip this episode, because you're like, Megan, I'm not diabetic, I'm not insulin resistant, none of that. I'm going to ask you to table that thought for a moment and stick with me for this episode, okay? Because today I'm going to break down how your body's blood sugar patterns might be just so quietly and significantly sabotaging your fat loss, especially if you're in your 30s or your 40s and your hormones are doing so many fun backflips and cartwheels and cool things that they've never done before. So stick with me. Let's talk about this because this might just change the game for you. All right, so what is blood sugar? What is insulin? You hear these terms usually in regard to diabetes, right? So in simple terms, so if you don't have diabetes, you probably haven't paid too close attention since you last took biology, right? So let me break it down just super simple for you. Blood sugar, simply put, is the amount of glucose or sugar in your blood. That is pretty straightforward, right? We get that. We get that. Insulin is a hormone. So insulin is the hormone that helps your body shuttle that sugar into your cells to be used for energy or to be stored, right? So when you eat carbs, or even actually, here's a little fun tip, even if you're eating too much protein with too little fat or fiber to go with it, this can also happen. Okay, so if you're someone who like super duper prioritizes protein, but you're not getting enough of those good fats or good fiber, this can also become a problem. So when you have that going on, or if you're eating too many carbs, or just when you eat carbs in general, this isn't always a problem, okay? This is just a functionality. Your blood sugar rises, which then triggers the release of insulin. That's just the natural process, okay? So when you're eating carbs or eating protein, sans fat or fiber, okay? That's what triggers the release of insulin. So you can think about it kind of like this. Insulin is like your Amazon delivery truck, right? It's a delivery truck that has all the goodies. It's got all that sugar on there, and it's dropping it off wherever it needs to be used or stored, wherever it can find room, right? So if the system is overwhelmed, if everything that needs sugar has already been fulfilled, that excess sugar is just going to get dumped into storage, aka fat storage, because it has to go somewhere. That insulin has to be freed back up to be able to continue to do its job. All right, so that is the basic functionality. That's what blood sugar is. That's what insulin does. There you go. That's it. So now let's get into what happens when that functionality goes haywire and it wreaks havoc in your life. And here's the good news. You don't have to just lay down and take it. There are simple ways to manage this without having to go to a doctor always. Not that seeing a doctor is a bad thing. I'm an advocate of advocating for your health. Okay, so anyhow, let's talk about the blood sugar roller coaster into fat storage pipeline. Okay, so when you do things like skipping meals or relying heavily on the caffeine and carb diet, or if you're eating those quote unquote healthy foods that claim, that are labeled as low fat, but are sneakily high carb, like protein bars. There's so many protein bars, you guys, that are basically a Snickers bar. You've got to learn how to read labels correctly. I always assume that people have learned how to read labels, nutritional labels and ingredient lists and everything. And I'm always shocked when I find out that people haven't Haven't learned that. Not in a like, oh, you should know better. No, just that, oh, I forget not everyone is obsessed with learning this kind of stuff like I am. So let me know if that's something that you would like some guidance on, and maybe I can create some sort of resource to help you understand what you're looking at when you look, like what to look for when you look at a nutritional label, because those protein bars can be so sneaky. They put all these labels on there that make it sound like it's a really healthy choice when really you could slap those exact same labels on a Snickers bar. Literally, I'm not even exaggerating. And it's legal. That's the most infuriating part. So anyhow, protein bars, a lot of them. Not all protein bars are made equal. There are good ones out there. Rice cakes is another really good example. Granola bars, foods with the gluten-free or the low-fat label, right? All of these labels are put on there legally, but a lot of companies do that to hide the fact that they're not actually healthy. They're just trying to appeal to a certain audience, okay? So all of those things can cause a spike in your blood sugar and then a crash, right? So again, when you're skipping meals and then you binge on a big old meal later, especially if it's a higher carb one, or if you're relying heavily on caffeine, or, right, your blood sugar is going to spike and then it's going to crash, which then causes a craving for more food. And then again, you're going to spike again, you're going to crash again. So if you're on this roller coaster of fat storing chaos. Okay, so signs of a sugar crash could be things like fatigue, irritability, anxiety, hunger, and cravings. Like not just hunger, but an appetite, an insatiable appetite, brain fog, headaches, sometimes when it gets extreme, even shakiness. Okay, these are all the things that we're trying to avoid, and it's all so manageable, but most people don't even realize that's what's happening. We take a lot of these signs just to mean, oh, I'm just getting older, or, oh, I just didn't sleep well last night, or, oh, I just need to go to therapy, which could all contribute to it, but also those things could be solved by addressing the blood sugar. Okay, that fatigue could be gone by addressing this problem. That anxiety could be totally cleared up by addressing this problem. Those chronic headaches, the brain fog, all of that could go away. And I know the frustrating thing is that these can also be signs of lots of other problems. But improving your blood sugar is never going to hurt, okay? So let's talk about insulin resistance, because sometimes this is something that you might be experiencing without realizing it. This isn't always something that gets medically diagnosed, because it can just kind of come on sneaky, and then you mistake the symptoms for aging, right? Or for other things, because again, those symptoms are also common in other issues as well. So people often do not get diagnosed with this. So what happens, insulin resistance, is when your cells that need sugar, right? When your cells stop listening to insulin, so then your body makes more insulin, which then increases your blood sugar levels, which makes fat loss harder. So I feel like that's a lot of very sciencey words. So I want to pull a little bit of an Oscar Nunez and explain it to you like you're 5. Please tell me that you get this reference. And it's not because I think you're dumb. I just find the analogies incredibly helpful. So I really enjoyed writing this little story for you, okay? So once upon a time, in the magical land of your body, there were cells that lived all over the place. There were muscle cells, fat cells, brain cells. They were just like cute little houses all over this land of your body. And these houses need these little cells, they needed energy to do their jobs, right? Those muscle cells needed energy to be able to contract and create force, right? The brain cells needed energy to be able to process information and relay that information to other areas of the body. And that energy comes from a super sweet delivery person named glucose, aka sugar, right? But here's the thing, glucose wasn't allowed to just walk into the house. That just wasn't an option. The doors were always locked. So to unlock the doors, your body sent in a helper called insulin. Insulin was the key. Insulin was the key that opened the door so that the glucose could go inside and give that cell the energy they need to do their job. So your body gets food, the glucose comes to provide the energy, the insulin provides the key to allow that glucose into the cells, which then gives energy to those cells so they can do their job. But over time, if glucose comes too often, which can happen in, maybe, or like if your body, this magical land is under a lot of extra stress, if it's not getting enough nighttime, if it's not getting enough sleep, or if there's other hormones that come in and wreak havoc, your cells start to get grumpy. Those muscle cells, those brain cells, they start to get a little bit grumpy and start thinking, geez, Louise, insulin again? I am so tired of opening the door every 5 minutes. So they do the reasonable thing and start ignoring insulin. That is called insulin resistance. So now insulin has to shout louder and louder and bring more friends as backup just to get that door to open a crack. So your body starts making more and more insulin just to handle the same amount of sugar. Are you following me? So the result of that, of having insulin resistance, is that you have too much sugar and too much insulin floating around in your body. So then your body starts to store more fat, especially around your belly. That's a pretty good key indicator that you might be experiencing insulin resistance. You also start to feel extra tired. You get hangry more often. You get that brain fog going on, and you feel like, you go into a food coma every time you eat, feeling like you seriously need a nap every time you have a meal. And your cravings are going to go wild for carbs and for sweets. Then, so if all this keeps going unaddressed for too long, those doors to the cells, they get stuck shut, and insulin will not be able to open it up. That key of insulin no longer works anymore. And that is what leads, so then that glucose that keeps coming in and in and in, and it just builds up. And that is what leads to prediabetes or type 2 diabetes. So there you have it. There is that cycle of blood sugar and why it's so important to recognize it and address it and not ignore it, okay? And then also, a fun little tidbit is that insulin resistance is particularly common in women who are going through perimenopause or after having kids. So, and that's because hormones, right? Your hormones come in and just add more confusion and chaos to the mix if you don't know what to do to handle it. So if your insulin is always high, your body's getting the message, we're in storage mode, not burn mode. Okay, you could be eating the most perfectly macro-balanced salads and hitting your perfectly intensified workouts, but if your blood sugar is a mess, your body's going to hold on to fat for dear life. I hope this is hitting home on how important this is, even if, as we mentioned in the beginning, you don't have diabetes or you've never been diagnosed with insulin resistance. Everyone can improve their blood sugar, especially if you've never done anything about it. Okay, so once again, I want to just rehash just a little bit on the signs to look out for that you might be on the blood sugar roller coaster. Okay, because these are such common symptoms as we age that most people just chalk it up to aging. And this is what I mean when I say that aging does not have to be a miserable process. These symptoms are not an automatic. It's not something that you just say, oh, well, I'm pushing 40, so this is just what it looks like now. No. Your body can feel good. You can feel good. You can have energy. You can feel strong. You have control. Okay, so cravings, especially cravings for carbs or sugar. Energy crashes. Usually, when you get that like 2 to 4 p.m. slump and you just feel like you've got to have that afternoon caffeine, that's a good sign. If you get that sort of constant hunger, like just, you just never quite feel, okay, well, I just ate an hour ago, but I'm hungry again already. Particularly if you find that you get hangry if you go too long. I see memes about this all the time. People poking fun about, oh, I'm starting to feel hungry. We got 30 minutes to find me a meal before I go full on honey badger. Yeah, that's cute and funny, but also that's probably a pretty good sign that you need to get your blood sugar under control to feel better. Again, this does not have to be something that you just accept. You can do something about it. Being hangry is not cute, and you can control it. Another sign is belly fat that just won't go away no matter what you do, no matter how well you feel like you're eating or how much cardio you do. If you've got that fat that's stored around your abdomen, that's a really good sign. If you're having sleep struggles and you find that you almost every night you're waking up somewhere between 2 and 4 a.m., this could be part of it. Okay, and then that brain fog, that irritability, all of those things. And I know it's so frustrating that these are all common symptoms of so many different things. The thing is, as I mentioned briefly before, those other things like perimenopause, for example, a lot of those are symptoms of perimenopause, being in perimenopause. Here's the good news. Perimenopause, it's only going to be improved by getting your blood sugar back into a good place, which again is completely in your control. And this is one reason why I have learned not to fear perimenopause. I'm not there quite yet, but I'm not as terrified of it as I used to be before I started learning these things that are within my control. So that is the really good news. So if you were to approach all of these symptoms from the focus, from the peripheral of blood sugar, then whatever, like maybe it is perimenopause, maybe it is something else, that thing is also likely to improve. Okay, so here are some of those things that you can do. All right, I keep talking about how this is manageable, how there are things you can do about it. So let's talk about it. Number one is to drop the guilt. Okay, you've been doing your absolute best, and you should be very proud of yourself for that. So we're going to drop the guilt and recognize that this isn't about restricting yourself. This isn't about restricting yourself of sugar or your favorite treats or, your pasta or bread or whatever that you love, right? This is about regulation. So replace the word restriction with regulation, okay? So here's a few examples of what you can do to easily start to regulate your blood sugar. Number one, you are going to anchor every meal with protein, fat, and fiber. You do not need to drop carbs. You don't have to go carb free. You need carbs. You need them. That, as I told you in that cute little story before, that is what gives your cells the energy that they need to do their jobs. Sure, most people are probably having more carbs than they need. But if you're here listening to this, there's a pretty good chance that you have been making a conscious effort to not overdo the carbs. So I'm going to guess that you're already in a pretty good place as far as your balance of carbs. But I want to make sure that you don't just eat protein. Okay, yeah, have lots of protein for sure, but you also need fat. I'm not sure if I've talked about this anywhere on the podcast yet, so maybe I need to do an episode on it, but fat is not the enemy. You need fat to survive as well. You need carbs, fat, and protein. Those are the 3 macronutrients that your body needs to function. Okay, so all those things talking about how fat is what has caused heart disease and all these things, not true. Nope, it's sugar. Sugar and refined carbs are actually the cause of all of that. But again, that's a whole nother episode. So anyhow, stop demonizing fat and get some good ones in your diet along with fiber. Fiber is hugely underrated in the health industry. So protein, fat, and fiber. Think about making sure that you've got all 3 of those things on your plate every single time you eat. And that is going to be the easiest probably way. Well, maybe not the easiest. I've got another thing that's probably even easier, but one of the simpler ways to approach it from a nutrition standpoint, okay? Number 2, don't skip your meals, okay? Especially breakfast. I know this is like very 90s, eat your Wheaties kind of a message, but, and I've got a little, there's always nuance, but this is a very general thing. Start your day with a stabilizing meal. Get that protein, get that fat, get that fiber. Okay? And I know that this can be a little bit of a hot topic because I know that intermittent fasting is a very, very popular nutritional approach these days. And I also do it on occasion. So I'm not saying to never do intermittent fasting. What I am saying is that this is one of those things where you have to be so diligent about being able to discern your body's signals. Okay? Because sometimes intermittent fasting feels so good, so supportive, so helpful. And then there are other times, and I haven't done it in a while because I figured this out, but there are other times when trying to force myself to do intermittent fasting when it's not the right time for me, it turns me into an absolute monster. So please be discerning on this one. I will do another podcast episode on this in the future. So let me know if you have any specific questions about intermittent fasting and how to tell when to do it versus when to not. But in general, if you feel all of those symptoms of having your blood sugar dysregulated, I'm going to really strongly recommend that you lay off of intermittent fasting and make sure you start your day with a really solid breakfast. Okay, again, using those factors that I mentioned in number 1, anchoring your meal with protein, fat, and fiber. Start your day off that way, okay? Number 3, this one honestly is probably the easiest way to regulate your blood sugar. Use your body after you eat. The most common one that I see out there is to go on a walk after you eat. It's so good. It feels great. It serves so many different purposes. Another thing that you can do if you don't have the ability to just go somewhere and go for a walk after you have your lunch, say you're at work and you don't have time to go somewhere to go on a walk or whatnot, do a few reps, a few sets of body weight squats. Like 3 sets of 10 body weight squats. That will help your body use that glucose that you just gave it. Okay, so just something, just anything to use your muscles to give that glucose somewhere to go so that it doesn't just hang out in your bloodstream. Okay, so again, a nice little, just a 10-minute walk, some squats, some push-ups, get creative, right? So simple. I have started doing squats every time I eat. I always told myself that I was going to hop on the treadmill for 10 minutes after I ate every meal. But to be honest, like having my kids at home, especially this summer, it's not very convenient because they all want to follow me. They all want to turn on the treadmill. It turns into a whole thing. So I had avoided it. And then I realized, I could just do some squats. So every time after I eat, I just do 3 sets of 10 squats now. And it makes me feel better. That is probably the easiest tip that you can take away from today to help you regulate your blood sugar. All right, the 4th tip is to check your caffeine timing. And this one, I get a lot of pushback on, not pushback, resistance, and I get it. Again, this is another whole episode that I can go on, but a few little tips. Number 1, you really want to try your best to avoid having caffeine first thing in the morning because that is when your cortisol levels are automatically at their highest. Now, that being said, if you just can't avoid having caffeine first thing, just make sure you're not drinking it on an empty stomach. And I will say that I am speaking on this topic from a do what I say, not what I do, because I do have caffeine literally right when I wake up. I wake up and I have my pre-workout so that I can go on my workout and everything before my kids are up for the day. So I am guilty of this, and it is something that I hope to shift in the future, hopefully the near-ish future. There are things in my life that are changing around a little bit. I don't know how much you guys care to hear about my personal life, but I recently got hired by a local gym to teach some water aerobics classes, which I'm super stoked about. I will also likely start teaching yoga there, which also stoked about. If you've been following me for any length of time, you know that I've been wanting to get certified as a yoga instructor for years, like over a decade. So anyways, all that said to mean that it looks like because of the timing of my classes, I might push my workouts to be later in the day, which means I probably won't need to have caffeine first thing in the morning once school starts. So I'm going to experiment with this. School starts in just a few weeks. So I'm going to experiment with this timing of caffeine and see what it does for me. So I will return and report on that. But again, that being said, as I mentioned, so if you can't avoid having caffeine first thing in the morning if it's just not feasible for your current life circumstances. Just give your body something to sort of temper the caffeine a little bit. Some things that I have done are having a little bit of trail mix in the morning, just having a few little, like cashews. Cashews are one of my favorite things. It's got good fat. It's got some protein. Okay, I've also done I'm actually not going to mention that because I don't recommend doing that because that was higher in carbs. Something with fat and protein is going to be a little bit better to again, sort of buffer that extreme shock to the system, first waking up and putting caffeine in your body. So that is one of the things that I really like doing. What I've been doing lately that I'm a huge fan of is actually just putting a scoop of vanilla protein powder into my pre-workout so that I have that with the caffeine. So that has gone really well for me. It's super easy. Whatever makes sense for you that you can stomach in the morning, just pick something that is higher in protein and fiber and fat. Any of those. Best if it has all three of those things, protein, fiber, and fat. Chef's kiss, perfect. Have a little bit of that, then have your pre-workout or whatever, and that will get you by until you can get to the point in your life where you do not need to have caffeine first thing when you wake up, okay? All right, so there's that. Okay, and then lastly, number 5, the 5th tip is to add some minerals into your life to support your insulin sensitivity. So things like magnesium and full spectrum electrolytes. So I know a lot of the time when I say electrolytes, people think sodium and potassium, and that's it. But there's more. I did Google it at one point, and I don't know why I don't have it in my notes here because I thought I put them in there. But go Google what are electrolytes, and you'll get a whole list of several things that you should look for in an electrolyte mix, or you can learn to make your own. But it's more than just salt. It's more than just potassium. There's more than that. So if you can add those kinds of minerals into your life, that will also help support your insulin production and usage, okay? So let me just say those 5 tips again really quickly. That would be anchor your meals with protein, fat, and fiber every time you eat. Number 2 is to not skip meals, especially breakfast. Number 3 is to walk or use your body in some way, use your muscles in some way after every meal. Number 4 is to not have caffeine on an empty stomach. Try not to have it first thing in the morning, right? So check your caffeine timing. And the last one is to add minerals. And as a little bonus human design tip for my human design friends, there are some people who are going to be designed to be more prone to blood sugar instability and the need for consistent fuel. As a very, very, very general guideline, a very, very general guideline that's going to look more like projectors and manifestors. You're going to be the ones who are going to be more prone to these things. As always with human design, it's not a rule. It's a guideline. It's a, tendency. Now, that does not mean you're broken. It just means that you need to pay attention to your body's signals and act accordingly, not according to somebody else's body. Okay, just because Susie does great on a high-carb breakfast and shouts her high-carb weight loss plan from the rooftops does not mean it will work for you. All right, I'm always game with experimenting with various things. But the bottom line is that it's not about forcing somebody else's plan to work on your body. You have to work on your body. If you want a little bit of help looking at the correlation between your human design and your propensity for insulin resistance or, the way that you should be fueling your body, just find me on Instagram, send me a DM, and let me know that you want some human design health tips, and I would love to take a look at your chart and give you some insights. That would be super fun. Okay, and if you're not already following me on Instagram, first of all, hi, why, where are you? Come say hi on Instagram. I will link my Instagram profile in the show notes, so come find me. Whether you want the human design tips or not, just come find me, come say hi. And let me know also which of those 5 tips you're going to start using to improve your blood sugar. Because for me, in my mind, that doing the walk or the squats after eating, that seems the easiest in my mind. But I would be interested to hear which one sounds most doable for you. That will be, and then we can see how that goes with me, changing up my caffeine intake soon. I would love to kind of go through this together. We're going to go through this together. All right. So to wrap everything up, to tie it all together, the bottom line with all of this is that if your body does not feel safe, it's not going to drop weight. This is not woo-woo. This is basic survival instinct. Okay? And unstable blood sugar is a big ol' fatty, flashing, unsafe signal in bright neon lights to your metabolism. So when your blood sugar is crazy, your body deems that as, oh, things are not safe. We need to hold on to everything, even if you're doing everything quote unquote right. Okay. And remember that this is not about restricting delicious foods. You can still have those delicious foods. It's just about better balancing everything now that you understand better. Because when your blood sugar is steady, your energy is going to climb, your mood is going to even out, and yes, your body is finally going to let go of that extra weight, and you're going to start to feel like what you see in the mirror finally matches who you feel like you are. And that is such a freaking cool feeling, and I want that for you. So if this episode today struck a chord with you, if you learned new things and you want to explore these things further and you want to, you're ready to stop just guessing and doing a hodgepodge approach to weight loss, and if you're ready to start taking results-focused action, what you're going to do is book a consult with me. I'm going to help you create a weight loss strategy that works with your body, not against it. So pop down into the show notes. You're going to see a link there to schedule a free consultation, a free weight loss consultation. You're going to find a time that works for you. If you don't see a time on the calendar that works for you, you're going to shoot me an email and let me know that you can't find a time, but you would love to have a free consult, and we're going to find a time that works for you. And then in 1 hour or less, you're going to walk away from that call with a strategy that's going to give you the results you're looking for. Okay, so thank you so much for listening in today. This is a very important topic. Please share this episode with someone who you think could use this knowledge and this information to be empowered to manage their body and their energy and their health as well. And I will see you in the next episode. Thanks for showing up for today's session. I know I love our time here together. If you do too, I accept payment primarily in the form of 5-star reviews along with shares on social media. If you're ready to go deeper with me, you can get started with the Weight Loss Kickstart for only $15, or you can go all in on the Weight Loss Accelerator, aka 12 weeks of private coaching. Links for both can be found in the show description, and I will see you back here in our virtual gym for our session next week.